Okay, now we're going to do this short mixing video here. Basically, I'm going to just walk you through the parts of mixing. This is not a professional video in any way on how to mix or master. It's just my process, how I started out, and some little tips that I learnt that I wished I'd have focused on more. Had I've done so when I started out, I would have made it a lot easier for me. The first thing I recommend you do is when you go into your DAW or your digital audio workstation, which is your software for mixing, is you set your project up. When you create a new project, whatever program you're using, you go new project and you set it up. Make sure that all the files you're going to import, these things with the waveforms in them, are going to be equal to what the sample rate and the bit resolution of your songs that you're bringing in. For example, in this song Free Man, I've got a whole bunch of background vocals, acoustic guitars, kick drums, subs, all, toms, vocals, everything. I'm only using some basic ones here to show you the concepts and to keep this video short. But you want to make sure that what these were recorded in are going to be equivalent to your project. Otherwise you're going to get some funny sounds coming out. They're not going to quite sound in the key that they were recorded in, and they're going to sound a little bit slow or fast or a bit murky. So you want to make sure that they're WAV file. These are WAV files. So mine are, if I select one of them here, if you roll over it, it says WAV file, and I know that these were recorded in 44.1 sample rate and 24-bit. So I'm going to go OK and just leave them. When you import them, they should be automatically converted, but sometimes they're not, and that's where you run into troubles. This has happened to me a couple of times and I didn't know what it was. I actually had a 4824 file, and I put it in as, I think, 44.1 16-bit, and it sounded terrible, and actually changed the length. If the song was this long, it actually moved it to this long, and it was sounding a bit stilted and short and a bit lower in tone. I'm like, what's going on here with this thing? But anyway, that's something to keep an eye out for. So in our mixing, I've got an acoustic guitar left and right, a bass guitar, a main vocal, and electric guitar left and right. And I've got these preloaded, so it's going to save us some time, but they're all disabled. All of these I'm going to turn off so you can hear what it sounds like just with some basic levels. So the way it will start out was all these faders will be up on 0. I've done some basic leveling just to keep things short, but if we hit play, you'll hear just a you can hear that the vocals aren't really standing out in the mix very well. They're a bit dry, nothing's been done to them, and so they don't stand out. So what you want to do is you want to actually treat some of these tracks with EQ to start with. So every one of these little tracks that's got a sound on it is going to have what's called an EQ. So for example, for vocals, an EQ curve looks like this. You're going to have a little bit of, you go from 20 to 20. So low 20 is your low frequencies, 20 hertz, up to 20,000 hertz. And so it's basically 20 hertz is your low end, your bass guitar, and 20,000 hertz is your air, like your sibilance in a vocal. So you want to cut out the sounds that don't sound good. This is muddiness right here. And when I turn these on, you'll hear what they sound like. Now, basically, every single DAW that you can get is going to have presets. So if you look, I didn't know to do this when I first started, but what I did is I worked from presets. And I recommend that whatever DAW you're using, look it up, go to a website that I have listed on this page, and start learning about your DAW, whether it's Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever it is. And I'm going to do another article on what DAW might be right for you, and review some of them and put a little video up and what I finally settled on. I started with Cubase, and I wish that I hadn't have. It's very complex, and as most DAWs are, but there's one that's really, really simple, and I've found it only a few months ago and really love it. So I'm starting to learn it after working with something that's very, very hard or was difficult for a beginner to use because it's an industry standard. This new little program that I found is quite a bit easier, and it's very intuitive for beginners to use, and it didn't cost as much, which is always a nice plus. But it does everything as powerfully and professionally as Cubase or Pro Tools or Logic Pro or any of those DAWs. So let's turn this up and put these equalizers on. I'll show you these little presets. So here's your lead vocal preset. Most of these will have an area where you can click the presets. You can get a bass. So I'll put the bass on the bass guitar. On the strings I'll put, like strum guitar, and picked out different presets. So this is what they sound like with the equalizers on all of them. I didn't actually put an EQ on this last guitar just to save time, but you notice that it started to bring it a bit live, must make it a bit more clearer and a bit more clarity. So that's the first step, EQing, and also your panning. You want to pan left and right and work out where your different parts go. Normally when I started out, I didn't know what panning went where. Normally, as a rule, your vocals will go up the middle, your bass guitar will go up the middle, and you can pan your keys if you had a piano, if you had violin strings, acoustic guitar, all of those sort of things go left and right. If you have a lead part, like a lead solo with electric guitar, it will go up the middle because that's one of your main bits for your mix. And also your drums, they can go left and right, but mainly your kick drum and your snare drum will sit in the middle as well. That's just a basic rule of thumb, but anything goes in mixing. There's no hard and fast rules, which is why it's so frustrating, because you've got to just listen to what you like, and it's so subjective. Everybody's ears are different. So let's turn it back up and turn these compressors on. And all a compressor does, if I get this compressor up first, I'll show you what all a compressor does is it takes the low sounds and it drags them up to this dot, wherever that may be as far as gain up goes. And if you've got peaks, like real peaks on your see your peaks on these waveforms, if one of them is really high, bringing this down will actually compress it and make them sound more even. So I'm not going to try and explain a compressor. There's many tutorials and courses on that explain these things well. And the same with reverb and also delay and EQ. They're your four main tools, as well as panning, in mixing, that are going to make a good basic song for you. And I highly recommend you learn just these basics in your DAW that you choose, and get really good at doing those first before you get any other expensive other plugins that you can read about that cost a lot of money. You can buy compressors for $1,000, but this compressor here is part of Cubase, and you can have a compressor in your DAW that will be part of your program as well. So I'm going to turn all these compressors on, and you can hear the difference in the sound. Here we go. Notice there's a difference already in how it sounds, just in bringing the levels up. It sort of brings more clarity. I confess and believe, came to set the captives free. With the vocals, it brings them up and just pops them out a little bit more in the mix, which is what you want. And that's what'll happen when you've got your faders, when they're all at zero. You'll often hear your vocals, you won't hear them, and you think, what on earth has happened to my vocals? Apart from setting the panning and the levels to where you want them, the compressor is the next best thing that will bring them up and help them pop out. So the next thing, basic things you want to do, is just add a little bit of space to your vocals, a bit of reverb and a bit of delay, and I'm going to turn these on now so you can hear what they sound like. Glory to Jesus, I'm a free man, singing Jesus. Hear that? As there's a bit of a ping pong delay. Without the reverb, it sounds like this. A ping pong delay. So you can hear the tail coming off, and with the reverb, it just gives it space, like you're in a church hall, or you can have all types of reverbs. They're very complex, so I won't explain them here, but basically you want a bit of reverb and a bit of ping pong delay or delay on your vocals.
Jesus.
And that's the result. So the mix sounds not bad. You've got a few left and right guitars, a few acoustic strum guitars left and right, and basically your bass and your vocals up the middle. This track has many more instruments to it, but I'm just cutting them down to show you the basic process. And many of these things, if you put a compressor on them in the first spot, a bit of EQ, like with the bass, for example, the EQ, I'm rolling off the high end because a bass guitar doesn't need 20,000K high sibilance. It can roll off to about here, and then it's going to accentuate the bass sounds. So knowing to get the basic presets is a good starting point in your mix, and it's going to sound considerably better from that point. The next thing we're going to move on to is some mastering. So I'm going to go into the mastering part right now.